Hello, everybody. I hope you all are doing well today. Um, we are going to wrap up, I guess it is chapter 4 here. All right. Oh, jeez. I'm going to get rid of this. I hope this goes away. Started my brokerage account, and this thing just won't go away. And I closed it out so I don't get distracted here. All right. So let us go into um, the presentation and see if that little screen goes away because it's not really downloading. Come on. There we go. It didn't go away. So we'll start this over again. I'll see if I can get this out of here. Oh, there it is. All right. There we go. Okay. You guys ever looking for a good brokerage account? Do Tastyworks. They're the best out there. All right. So we are talking about species interactions, communities, and populations and stuff. And today we're going to get into something very important, which is about the keystone species and abundance. Okay. So a species that has an impact far greater than the abundance is called keystone species. And they are, they're keystone to the whole ecosystem. And we're going to review a couple of them. So decomposers that recycle the nutrients and replenish the soil are keystone species. Worms, they are a keystone species. Those turkey vultures getting rid of those carcasses in the middle of the road, they are keystone species. Without them, we would have, imagine how much waste we would have without all those flies eating that stuff. I mean, it would be amazing. Okay. There's also those ecosystem engineers, the beavers out there, and prairie dogs. I remember when I used to mountain bike before my accident, and we used to go out to Settlers Ribs, and over the years, this beaver put a beaver dam in there, and it was amazing how that ecosystem changed because they allow all these things to pool up and do all this stuff, and it just changed the whole. I mean, it just brings so much abundance of life into the um, ecosystem. It's amazing. All right, and then there's also the top predators, which we talked about, the wolf in the Yellowstone National Park. Okay, without that, the whole system changed. And then when we brought it back, it changed to what we knew it was. Whether or not one of those was better than the other, that's for you to say. All right, but you can see here, like I said, they talked in that uh, video about Yellowstone. If you take out the top predators, that would start a trophic cascade. Well, I also believe that a trophic cascade could be from anywhere in the middle. So we get rid of the decomposers, that's on the bottom, and we're hurting. We get rid of the top predators, that's on the top. But we can also get somewhere in the middle, the beavers or the prairie dogs right in the middle, that can start a trophic cascade either up or down that food chain or right from the middle on both sides. Okay, so we need to be very careful about these keystone species because we don't know which one is really a keystone species until we remove it. All right, and the one of the most interesting place up there in the Pacific Northwest, we have the sea otters, and those sea otters, man, they make a nice hat, all right, and they keep us nice and warm during the winter time wearing their fur, all right. And we decided that we were going to hunt them all, and what we realized is that the sea otters are actually a keystone species. They actually eat the sea urchins. All right, and they're the only ones, kind of like pandas don't eat bamboo. The sea otters are the only ones that eat the sea urchins. Okay, and when we took them out, they sea urchins just went to town because they had no predators, and they took out all the kelp. And when that kelp's gone, just like it would be in, it's a kelp forest. They call it a kelp forest, just like where the coral reefs are gone. Nemo has no place to live. All right, and the ecosystem actually collapsed. All right, but this is such an interesting story because the sea urchins are the only ones that really eat the kelp, so they kept the kelp satisfied, right? And kept the kelp from getting out of hand. All right, and then the sea otters kept the sea urchins from getting out of hand. So it was a big long circle, all right? And if this kelp got out of hand, it would deoxify, take out the oxygen out of the water, and all the fish would be gone anyways. Okay, so this could get out of control also. So it was a natural balance, a circle of three different keystone species that kept that allow this to survive. Okay. Communities respond to disturbances in various ways. So I'll say this a couple times during this class that biodiversity means resilience, which means sustainability. All right. Because if there's a disturbance out there, and a disturbance is any event that has a rapid or drastic effect on the community and ecosystem. All right. So this disturbance can be a small and localized, like a tree falling, creating a gap in a forest, or a disturbance can be like a hurricane or a flood or a tornado. All right. Or maybe a tornado might be a little bit small, right, and localized. Okay. But disturbances may reoccur regularly or every once in a while. Okay, I always liked when I talked to some climate change deniers way back when, they used to always say, "Hey, well, we haven't been hit by a hurricane in 3 years on the United States East Coast." And I would always tell them, just because we didn't get hit by a hurricane does not mean they do not exist. All right, they're still out there and getting stronger and stronger. We can't control where that hurricane goes. All right. Just so funny. But disturbance is happening, and the more biodiversity there is in that ecosystem, the better chances that that ecosystem will survive after that disturbance. Maybe something will make it, right? Maybe there'll be a mammal rodent that will turn into a human being someday, right? Okay? You never know. So a community that resists change and remains stable shows that resistance to the disturbance. All right. Tropical rainforest always getting hit by different things, but it still very bounces back because it has that biodiversity. Okay. A community that is changed by disturbance but returns to original state says it means it has resilience. All right. So we got the resistance between all those occurring disturbances, and then that shows us it has resistance. All right, so biodiversity means we have resilience, which means we have sustainability. Something in that ecosystem is going to carry on life. Severe disturbances may eliminate all or most of the species in the community, initiating series of changes called succession. Okay. So secession brings with the colonization of what's called the pioneer species. And then just think way back when the pioneer species, we finally had that algae in the oceans, and that gave life to everything else. That was like the pioneer species. And then we had the mud skippers skip up onto land and start doing the land stuff, right? That was a pioneer species. Okay, but this secession happens after every time we have a like a forest fire. Okay, we'll see that there's going to be some pioneer species that start off. If you ever want to make a lot of money over the summertime, you like camping, there's some people that actually go around and chase the forest fires. And after the forest fires are out, the first pioneer species is going to be this mushroom that eats the burnt wood. And they go around and collect it, and those are worth a pretty penny in the restaurant industry because they're so unique, and I guess they taste good. I've never had it. All right, but that's the first species. Then we can see what happens afterwards, right? We see what seedlings come up, and later on we're going to be able to figure out what the climax community is going to be. All right, all the hardwoods are going to return. Okay, and we just seen this. It's just repeated observations time and time again of what happens after a forest fire. So primary succession occurs when a disturbance removes all the plants and soil life. Okay, a big old, um, forest fire or whatever. Okay, and first you'll see the lichens secrete acids and break down the rock, beginning the process of the soil formation. Oh, this is when the earth just first forms. Sorry, excuse me. All right, and you have the bedrock, and then you get the lichens, and then all of a sudden we have all the farming that's happening. Okay. Um, But we could have just the gradual of grasses, the shrubs, the shade tolerant plants, and into a forest. Okay, and then that could happen if we have a disturbance. We have a forest fire, it takes down all this shady trees. We're going to have the same kind of succession start over and over again. Okay, another forest fire wipes it out, and another one comes up. Okay, and that's called secondary succession. So primary succession is where we have the bare rock, like the volcanoes that are going off in Hawaii. And sooner or later, that volcanic rock will be covered by lichens, and then all of a sudden, Hawaiians will be putting pineapple trees there. All right, and then a hurricane will come and wipe it all out, and then we'll start back with the small grasses, shrubs, shade trees, and then larger trees. Communities may undergo shifts. So communities do not pass through the stages of succession evenly. So it depends on the ecological condition, which may promote or inhibit the progression. Okay, and this is very key to understanding how Mother Nature works. So at times, communities may undergo what's called a regime shift. All right, meaning that the entire character of the community changes from a disturbance. All right, and this is very rare, and it has to be a very big disturbance, but it can also happen gradually over time. All right, due to gradually warming temperatures. Okay, so climate change, the loss of keystone species or introduction of invasive species really does change these little ecosystems that man can that has influence. In some cases, human disturbances is causing novel communities. All right, so we've never seen these type of communities before. We've never seen the python in the swamps of Florida. All right, we've never seen those carp in the streams. All right, it's like it's a novel virus, the corona is COVID-19 is a novel virus. We've never seen it before. Well, we've never seen these communities, so we can't really judge what the succession is going to be. We just have to take the best educated guess of what it will be. All right, using science and seeing what's happened in the past and trying to equate it to what will happen in the future. Okay, so we look at the streams of the Mississippi River with all those carp and what's happened, and then we equate that and forecast that into what could happen in the Great Lakes, and we say, oh no, if that happened, boy, we'll be in trouble. Okay. The introduction of species or non-native arrivals to a community brought by people is probably one of the hardest ones the biggest mistakes, some of the biggest mistakes we've had. Not all are bad, all right, but most fail to establish populations, but the ones that thrive are called invasive species, okay? So an introduction of species become invasive when limiting factors that normally regulate the population growth are absent. So there's no competition, predators and parasites, and those animals are able to just take off and do what they need to do. Okay, and you'll find most of that stuff. It happens a lot, and we don't mean it on purpose. All right, the Australians brought in the bullfrog so that they could get rid of some of their flies and stuff like that. Toads, or the king toad, it's called. And now there's king toads all over the place. My grandfather wanted to. He worked on the engine. He was an engineer, and he worked on putting down that I-79 or I-70, whatever goes from Florida to Pennsylvania. That big long stretch. And they decided to put this weed called kudzu on it. And boy, they put it there because they didn't have to cut it. It was a nice little vine. He had some purple little flowers on it. It was really efficient, they seemed, and it fit inside the biome. It was the right temperature and precipitation for that to just grow naturally. Okay, but it had no competition, no predators, and no parasites to eat it up, and it just went crazy. And now it's starting to choke out the trees, and we are spending more money trying to keep it back than we would if we just would have had an all natural, South Carolina grass growing around the sides. Okay, we're putting a lot of money just to try to keep it back. Okay, so the Asian carp became that invasive species, and we saw that in that video. It just outcompetes all the native fish in the streams, and if that gets into Lake Erie or into the Great Lakes, then we're going to really have some troubles ahead. So we can't respond to invasive species with control, eradication, or prevention. All right, and eradication is probably the hardest one of invasive species. It's extremely difficult to find all the boa constrictors out there in the swamps of or in wetlands of Florida. Okay, getting rid of this kudzu is turned into a big mess. There are some things. There's like this fish called. It's really mean fish, and we have actually drained a couple ponds to get this fish out. All right, but we never take big bodies of water. But it's extremely difficult. Since the 1990s, federal funding has been provided for control measures, though. All right, we need to try to do things. All right, so the netting juvenile fish, contacting contracting fishermen to catch the adults. All right, bubbling carbon dioxide into the water, broadcasting noise into the water. We do for all those nasty carp out there. All right, Pymatumi has a big carp population, and every year they have a festival where you can go out with your bow and arrow and try to get as many carp as you can, man. You just keep on catching those bad boys. Okay. Then we also have what's called control and eradication. Have been very expensive though. All right. So now attention is given to preventing future invasions. All right. So we're using what's called the precautionary method, which we'll talk about later a little bit more too. But that just don't put it out there until you know what's going to happen. Okay. So scientists who study the restoring the ecosystems, is called restoration ecology. All right, and it devises ways to restore these altered areas to their conditions before industrial civilization, or back to a more natural situation. It doesn't have to be before industrial civilization to work in this field. All right, I call it brownfield remediation. All right, and you don't have to go all the way back, okay? Because sometimes you can't. Okay. Ecological restoration can have two aims: to restore the functionality of an ecosystem, or to return a community to its pre-settlement condition. All right. So we've got to figure out what we want to go back to. All right, and try to get it there. This is usually done because it is actually more efficient. We've lost an ecological service that we want to gain back. Okay, so I don't know if you guys remember, about a year ago or 2 years ago, Florida had all these red tides going on, and it really killed the tourist industry because it smelled like nasty, and it really smelled, and no one wanted to go down to Florida to vacation. All right, and part of that problem was the enthalpy, the fertilizers that were going on and causing these algae blooms and then the dead zones, and then fish would die and all this other stuff. So what they're trying to do is change all the canals that these houses are built up so that water more freely flows to the ocean. They're trying to restore the functionality of the ecosystem so it cleans itself. It does all that fertilizer and stuff that causes those red blooms don't get stuck in all those canals that we kind of took away. The free flowing fingerlings on streams are not going there the way they used to. All right, and we're trying to restore that. All right, we're also doing that with the mangroves in Louisiana. There's a good article called "Louisiana's Losing Its Boot." All right, because if you look on a map, you'll see Louisiana looks like a boot. But then if you go to Google's maps, you'll see that boot's basically gone, because that boot was the end part where you put your toes was a bunch of mangroves, and they're starting to really visibly disappear on us. So we are trying slowly but surely to restore that ecosystem, because that's an ecological service for us. That helps when we have those hurricanes that are going to come sooner or later. Right? They're never going to go away, and they're getting stronger and stronger because hurricanes feed off the energy, the heat in the ocean, make them stronger and stronger. And then there's a bigger tidal surge, storm surge that comes in, and those mangroves will protect the shore where we all lived. And now that they're disappearing, we have less protection. So we want to try to restore that functionality of that ecosystem, the pre-settlement conditions, all right, so that we can still settle in New Orleans. Another good example is the U.S. tall grass prairie, which much of it has been removed from farmland. All right, because this is great. This is some of the best. This was some of the best soils out there. All right, after millions of years of like composting and layering all this good soil on there, we decided to put a lot of corn and cattle there, and we now have realized we don't need that much room, and some of the soils aren't as good as they were before. So to replenish them and restore them the way they, so they can build back up again, we are trying to plant the way Mother Nature had it and let Mother Nature restore it, because just by throwing nitrogen and phosphorus on the ground ain't gonna cut it. We need to bring that soil back to life. Okay, we need to get that keystone species, the worms and the fungus in the soil, back in there so that we can have a proper planting, a harvest. All right, plants need all that stuff. Okay, 1,000-acre area in Chicago has been restored with its native vegetation, which is good news. Okay, and this is kind of what I was talking about with Florida. We have the trembling things. All right, this was the former canal. The water would just run right on out. All right, but here now it meanders a little bit more. Mother Nature can help clean it up a little bit more. All right, we got these nice little ripen areas to stop the runoff from getting in there. All right, so before it would just all that stuff would just run right in there. Okay, a little buffer zone. Okay, so they are doing I'm proud of Florida for what they're doing. I wish they would do a little bit more. All right, but that's more of a political concern than it is a restoration concern, because even both political parties want to have tourism come to Florida, and they can't stand that smell either. Okay, so it's right in front of their faces. So they're doing some stuff, and this is part of what they do. They take out the old canal. And just imagine if there was just suburbs. So this is also all the suburbs too. Okay, and these canals, they don't have roads in some of these places in Florida. They have boats, and that's how they get around. Despite communities being in very different locations of the earth, they often have similar structures and functions. All right, so a regional complex of similar communities is called a biome, and biomes are classified by primarily the dominant plant and vegetation structure, which is a result of the climate. So if we know the temperature and the precipitation of a certain area, we can predict what plant and vegetation structure would want to live there. Makes sense, right? And that's how some of these invasive species, especially the plant life, happen, right? So we're here in Pennsylvania or in South Carolina, and we say the kudzu plant is very lovely, easily maintained, and then Japan has the same temperature and precipitation, so why don't we plant it along here? And lo and behold, it becomes a problem because the kudzu in Japan coexisted with other animals and insects that were able to digest it and control it for, in the ecosystem, to hit that S curve on top of the population growth, all right? So it doesn't overdo its carrying capacity, all right? So, biomes, once we know the temperature and the precipitation, we can know what can live there. Now, we're going to go through some of the Earth's biomes right now pretty quickly, all right? But you can see that all the biomes go, I think it's longitudinally, across the top of the Earth, all right, in the longitudinal bands or latitudinal bands. I can't remember which one's which now, all right? But all these different colors are the different kinds of biomes. So up top here, you have the tundra, all right, and then you have the boreal forest, okay, temperate deciduous all the way down, and it kind of flips over. So we have the top up here, and then the bottom here, and in the middle you have the desert. But if there was landmass down here, I bet you there would be a tundra. Okay, I bet you there'll be a boreal forest as well. Okay, it's just that we have no landmass down here. So climate helps determine the biomes. All right, so temperature and precipitation exert the greatest influence. All right, we need to remember that it's not also on these. Let me see. It's not also um, just because of latitude, but going up a mountain too, you will have different um, areas, right? So you have the tropical forest down here, and then the temperate forest, boreal forest, and then tundra. So when you're going up a mountainside, the temperature and precipitation is going to change, and you're going to see the biome change, and the what grows there is going to change as well. So climate helps determine the biome. So climate diagrams, also called climate graphs, depict the seasonal changes. So here we got the deciduous forest. Okay, are found in the mid latitudes and have relatively even precipitation through the year. So the trees that need a lot of water can actually uptake that water and do okay. Okay. Um, Winters are frozen, causing the trees to drop their leaves. Okay, so these aren't like the pine trees. Right, and you can see here's the climate graphs. Right, so you have the temperature, normal bell curve. Okay, and the precipitation stays flat all year, allowing these trees to get the water they need. Okay, and if there was not enough water, there wouldn't be these trees. Okay, if it was too hot, there wouldn't be these trees either. Okay. We also have the temperate differences between winter and summer are the most extreme, and rainfall diminishes in the temperate grasslands. And these biomes are known as the prairies or steppes. And these are some of the best. We got the nice little bell curve here, and a rough, not too much water, but a consistent um, amount of water, which allows us the grasses to grow, but not the trees. All right. And over time, man, this is like the Great Plains that we have. And this grass was just, I don't know if you guys know what compost is, but this grass would grow and then die off and grow and die off and grow and die off. And there was a ton of buffalo that would just love eating the grass and prairie animals and stuff. And they would put all their poop all over the place. And for thousands and thousands of years, this soil just built up and became some of the best rich soils in the world. And we came in with our tractors during the fossil fuel industrial revolution. We plowed the heck out of it, man. That's why we make the most food around town. I don't know if we make the most, but we definitely, this is called the breadbasket of the world. And it was due to the soils being alive because there was a nice little ecosystem of constant food going down in here and allowing this grass to grow. And that's great for our corn. All right. And we have totally transformed this biome like no other. The environmental science is the study of humanity's effect on the environment and its impact on us. Well, one of the effects we've done is actually transform this biome. We've transformed almost every single biome except for two. All right. So we transformed this one. We transformed the deciduous forest. Okay. Guess what Pennsylvania is supposed to be? And why did they call Pennsylvania Penn's Woods? Right. Because there was a lot of woods. But where are they now? All we really have now is Cook's Forest. That's an old growth forest. It's a beautiful place. Go up and see it, folks. All right, a beautiful place to go camping and just take a walk around. I bet you there's that web of life underneath there. And when you walk and think about that video about the lady that talked, the trees can talk. All right, but we changed a lot of the deciduous forests around the area too, and we definitely changed the biomes, the grasslands. Okay, we have the temperate rainforests, which are rich rainfall, but still found in mid latitudes. So there's a lot of conifer trees, and we can see how we're affecting those with the forest fires. This is the Pacific Northwest here, all right, where E.T. came down. If you guys ever seen the movie E.T. hung out here, but this was recently one of the fires. I mean, Oregon is this area, all right, and this was what these forests were on fire recently. They still are. I mean, we almost had to get rid of the Portland, the city of Portland, Oregon, almost had to evacuate because of the fires. I mean, that was crazy. They were on high alert to tell us residents of Portland, a major city. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But you can see here that it still has a natural bell curve for the temperature and the water levels. It's very high up here, all right, during the summertime, all right, and that's what allows for all this moss and big old trees and redwoods to grow. Okay. Tropical dry forests, all right, have a wet and dry season each year, and they occupy about half the year. The temperature is constantly warm, and leaves are shed during the dry season. So they don't really have any snow, but since there's no water for the trees, they need to conserve their energy. Like I said, I think trees are smart. I'm just crazy like that. Okay, they shed their trees and lose them, and they preserve the energy. And then when it rains again, it gets all green. It's a beautiful, beautiful sight. All right, and you can see the high water levels. And you also notice in these areas that the trees are not as large as the great redwoods, okay, because of there's not enough water precipitation for them to survive. That is the limiting. It's called the limiting factor, right? Is three. The law of man. A plant will only grow um, as per its limiting factor: water, nutrients, and sunlight, right? So I don't care how much CO2 or food. I don't care how much CO2. You'll hear this in the climate deniers. It's plant food. We'll have more and bigger plants, right? It doesn't matter how much CO2 that plant gets because it, like I said, it is smart. It won't overeat, all right? And it really, the maximum harvest will all depend on its limiting factor, how much water it gets. You're not going to grow. I don't care how much CO2 you have. If you don't have any water, you're not going to grow. Or if you have too much water, too, you're not going to grow. Okay, so it's all about a nice little balance when it comes to the plants. And yes, if you do pump in extra CO2 into a greenhouse, that will make those plants grow faster. There is truth to that. That's the way it is. But there is what's called the law of diminishing returns. And you can pump out as much as you want, and those plants ain't going to take it up because, like I say, plants are smart. We also got the savannas that are tropical grasslands with little tiny trees in them. All right, and they're found in the dry tropical areas, including Africa, Australia, and India. And they have a distinct wet and dry season as well, keeping these trees smaller. All right, and the grass will get all brown and then get greened up. All right, in this area too. I mean, this has got to be some prime farmland soil, but the problem is that the microbes don't have enough water. All right, so you see here the water level, but in the prairies, where was I in the prairies? Grasslands, the water level is a lot higher, right, and more consistent. Pretty neat biome. Temperature and precipitation is what really drives all these things. Okay. So we got the deserts, of course, which is the driest biome of all, receiving less than 25 centimeters of rain per year. Not much lives here. All right, very little diversity in this. You can see the temperature is consistent, but there's very little rain. All right, and nothing's gonna want to live out there, even us humans, without that rain. Okay. And then we got the tundras, and this is one of the biomes. I mean, we haven't really touched the desert too much. There's not much we can do with that unless go out there and try to get some oil or something. I don't know. But the tundras are also very dry, but are consistently cold all year. And we don't really live here. We really haven't messed with this biome. We haven't messed with the plants that much, but we are changing it. All right, so because underground soil is permanently frozen, and this is called the permafrost. All right. And tundras are unoccupied. So human activity really hasn't gone too much up here. But since the soil is supposed to be permanently frozen, okay, inside that permanently frozen soils are amoebas and bacterias that are just sleeping, waiting to wake up. All right, at about 32 degrees when it becomes unfrozen, they start doing their thing and start decomposing all this stuff that has never decomposed because it's just too cold. It's permanently frozen. Okay. And scientists know this because you can go and take a soil sample. You too can do this experiment. You can go up to the tundra, and grab some soil samples from all over the place. All right, de-thaw them, and it will be just full of life. Unbelievable! All this stuff will just start showing up. Right, and it will start doing its job. And when these um, stuff starts decomposing everything, their natural exhalation is oh my geez, holy cow, I just had a brain fart. Their normal exhalation is methane, all right, which is a greenhouse gas, all right? Anaerobic bacteria, they're called, and they work without oxygen and they exhale as natural gas, what we use natural gas today. And that is what's called a positive feedback loop, right? So we have the heat of the earth is getting a little bit warmer, de-thawing the soil in the tundras, okay, causing the bacteria to wake up and start exhaling another greenhouse gas, making it warmer again, causing even more thawing and more problems, and it just can become a disaster. All right, so we are definitely are on I believe a tipping point. We'll talk about this a little bit more in the climate section, but we are on a tipping point of the tundra running away from us due to this uh, thawing of the tundra. Okay, and they always say, hey, why don't we just go up there and plant some wheat? Unbelievable. Crazy. Then we also have the boreal forest. The boreal forest we haven't really done too much with either, all right, because it's also very cold, all right, up there, and we don't like really see doing it. But what we see is more precipitation in the tundra. And they are dominated by a few species of evergreens, and the soils are really acidic and nutrients poor, so not too many plants can actually grow up there. But we don't spend too much time up there. But believe it or not, we are messing up this biome, all right? Because under the boreal forest, believe it or not, we'll learn a little bit about this in the energy section. Is a bunch of stuff called tar sands, all right? And then tar sands are oil that we use, all right? The XL pipeline is all about getting that tar sands oil down here, and that tar sands is in this acidic, poor soils, and we're chopping out of trees and basically taking a bulldozer and scraping up all the soil and cleaning it out, or not cleaning it out, separating the tar, which is the oil, from the sand, which is the soil that this is going in, and putting it in our cars and driving. All right, so we're messing up this biome as well. We've changed almost every single biome. Turning the prairies to farmlands, we're turning the boreal forest into oil harvesting. We've changed our woods into cities. It's crazy. But that's, we're allowed to do that. It's all part of how things happen. Okay. And we're noticing it when now it's time to start preserving it a little bit more. All right. So we can enjoy this stuff. Okay. And then we got the chapalas, which are found in few small patches throughout the world. So this is just like California. All right. It's kind of like this in the Mediterranean. Okay. We have nice constant weather temperature in some rainy seasons and then dry season, a little bit of rain. Okay. Los Angeles. I mean, that's what this is. Hollywood. Think of Hollywood when you think of these. All right. Fires, of course, are frequent, and the climate is induced by nearby oceans. All right. So those are the biomes of the world. All right. Just remember on a biome, if you can remember the temperature and the precipitation, if you can predict that, you can predict what's going to grow there. And we need to be careful not to put too many invasive species in there. We got to use what's called the precautionary principle. Know what we're doing beforehand. Okay. All right. So that is it for chapter 4. And next one, I believe, is chapter 5. It's going to be chapter 14. We're going to get into climate change. All right. And then we will get into the economics of stuff and how we figure out all this stuff. And then we'll start getting into the population and all this other stuff. All right. So that will be it for today. All right. So you guys have a good day, and we will catch you next week. Any questions, send me an email. All right.